Mr. Turner. Pleasure to talk with you here in the nation's capital. Good day.
Chris, I thought you were introducing yourself to me, and I was going to say I've been with you many times, and I'm a great fan. So it's wonderful to be on you co-hosting Vince or substituting for Vince today.
Likewise. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, you're one of our favorites. And I wanted to be clear because the gentleman sounded like he was a little incredulous that I was oversimplifying the utility issue or that I was somehow maybe unfairly pegging the blame for these fires on this utility. I'm not anti-utility company. Don't misunderstand that at all. But I think it seems to be that's the direction these fires in Maui are being targeted. I don't know what you know or what you can. We talk a lot about how to deliver reliable, cheap, plentiful power to people's homes. And I think most utilities are trying to do that, despite government working against them. So I don't want to make them a villain. I'm just saying that seems to be what they're saying is the issue here.
I agree with you 100%. And utility companies are definitely in a tough spot because they are not totally private entities, and they are, like my wonderful fossil fuel industry, they are heavily regulated by government. So the utility companies are getting told by a bunch of bureaucrats, hey, look, we passed a law that says 50% of the energy has to be green by the year X. Make it happen. And then the utility companies are scrambling. So if the Maui Electric is saying, look, we knew we had to replace a lot of our lines, but we have a fixed budget, and we have now a rule from the government that says we have to put up solar panels or wind farms. That's where we pivoted. And so I don't think there's intentional malice here, but I do think when government bureaucrats who have a political agenda get involved, they create chaos. Every time I talk to you, I feel like I liken the green agenda to the COVID agenda, and I do always believe it's a perfect analogy. Look at the chaos that they created during COVID, all for our good, right? All to protect us, all to keep us safe. So they claim, but they created absolute chaos and bankrupted businesses and ruined people's lives and drove up the suicide rate and killed our education system. But it was all good intentions, right? It wasn't meant to be that way. That's just the result. And what they're doing to the utility companies is very, very similar.
I'll give you an example of exactly what you're talking about. I have good friends in the utility industry, high-ranking officials, actually, in one utility company. I'll just say in the Midwest. And this particular company, headquartered in this particular state, and it's a Republican, a red legislature, a red governor. They have what they call a board of utilities. And this mostly Republican-appointed board of utilities has now forced this utility company in this red state to issue what they call time of use rules on their customers. And I would just warn everyone listening to us right now that this is, if it's not already on your power bill, it will be coming soon. You can bank on it. Time of use rules, which tell a utility between the hours of 4 and 8, 4 in the afternoon to 8 p.m., that is peak use. And if you're going to insist on using dishwashers and washers and dryers and generators and stuff that draws a lot of electricity, we're going to charge you lots more in an attempt to basically discourage you from using a lot of energy during those peak hours of 4 to 8. This is something the utilities are being forced to do by a state board, an unelected board. I mean, this is going on all over the country, Daniel.
It really is. And the next step after that is what we have seen in several municipalities, especially in the state of Colorado, where then they say, well, the next step is now we're going to put in a smart meter. And if you don't obey, if you use more electricity than we think you should be able to use, we're just going to turn it off. And you can see multiple stories online. Close to 10,000 people have complained that they put up their thermostat and the utility company lowers it because they've decided, nope, we don't think you deserve that much electricity right now. Or what they really mean is we're not producing enough electricity for the grid. And so this is a huge problem. Why are they not producing enough electricity? It's 2023. Our parents didn't have this problem. My grandparents during World War II never said that they were having utility problems. And yet now at this time of great Bidenomics, when everything is supposed to be hunky-dory, we can't produce enough electricity for our customers, and we can't. And the reason why is not because we don't have enough electricity production, not because we don't have enough resource or not because we don't have the potential. It's because government bureaucrats who don't know a damn thing about the electric grid are passing on these silly green mandates. So the utility companies are in a bind. And sadly, you're going to see this happen more and more and more as bureaucrats get more green and they get more involved in making energy policy.
Daniel Turner, founder, executive director of Power the Future, just talking about this morning on my morning show in Philadelphia, Daniel, that the Garden State, I talked with a state senator there from Atlantic County. He's the senator that represents the southernmost tip of New Jersey. And most of his constituents, particularly those that are up and down the coastline of New Jersey, they are vehemently opposed, the majority of them are, including Democrats, by the way, vehemently opposed to what Phil Murphy, the governor of New Jersey, is advocating, and that is planting, and I loved this word. I had not heard this term before, industrializing the ocean, planting these windmills up and down the coastline of New Jersey. And we've seen now something like 40 marine mammals since December wash up on the coast, and unabated, Phil Murphy and a lot of the Democrats say, full steam ahead. Let's industrialize the ocean, plop those windmills out there. And, among many things that are problematic about it, one of the first things is I explained to him, I just vacationed at the Jersey Shore this summer, and I said, if they do that to the town that we love to go visit, I'll never return. I like to sit out. Yeah. I rent a place on the shore. I like to look out at the ocean. I don't want to stare at a bunch of garbage windmills. Like, I'm out. You know what I mean?
No.
That's just me.
No, and you're absolutely right. And not only do they not work, but they are made predominantly in China. And they're built by foreign companies. And so who are the beneficiaries? And proof that it doesn't work is we just have to look at places like California and also Texas. This is bipartisan stupidity. It is not just Democrats who have bought into this agenda. A lot of Republicans have as well. And you just have to look at utility rates and how much they've skyrocketed. And you have to look at latency and intermittency. And you have Texas Republicans and California Democrats sending those emails saying, hey, everybody, please don't you do laundry after 4 p.m. because the grid is dying. Or, hey, everybody, fingers crossed we don't have a storm. And I say this now, we have fingers crossed energy policy in this country, right? Let's hope we don't have a bad winter. Fingers crossed there's no ice storm in Texas, because last time 700 people died when the wind turbines froze, right? Fingers crossed it's not a very hot summer. And that's not how we do energy policy as adults, but it is how we do energy policy now under this green agenda. And quite frankly, that's the end of American greatness, because what made this country great was reliable, abundant, inexpensive energy. And that meant cheap goods. It meant cheap food. It meant a very inexpensive life. And with the surplus of cash, you bought things, you built a business, you sent your kids to college, you supported your local charities. Cheap food, cheap energy, cheap life made America a fantastic country. And what we're seeing now is our country's becoming very, very expensive, like our European ancestors have been for a while. But you know what? I love my Irish grandparents and my Italian grandparents. I don't want to be them. They left that continent for a reason, right? They came here, and we're turning into them.
And I have to say, we're getting awfully comfortable, not you and me and those listening, but government, news media, all seem very comfortable now with approaching and hovering over, in many cases, $4 a gallon gas. This is becoming commonplace and comfortable rather than a news event.
Well, a real concern I have under this administration is that the baseline normalcy is shifting to the left, and we're accepting it. It is not normal to see $80 a gallon gas. And for the last year, it was not normal to see $70 a gallon barrel of oil. Oil should be $45, $50 a barrel. It was under the Trump administration, right? And he was the oil shill. He was in the pockets of big oil, and oil was $40 cheaper, right? But what's happening now is we are seeing this as normal. Or you ask people, you ask my mom at the grocery store, yeah, that's just what chopped meat costs these days. No, Mama, that's not normal. It is not normal that eggs are $5 a dozen, but it is becoming normal. And if you go back to the beginning of this, which was the Obama administration, when they talked about European-style pricing, They wanted it. They want things to be expensive. It creates government dependency. It's great for huge corporations. It's just terrible for people. And you know what? Do Democrats ever really care about people?
The answer's always no. Daniel Turner, executive director, founder, of Power the Future. Bottom line is for me, because what worries me most is these policies are set in motion, and poor utility companies, as we started off by talking, and by the way, automakers, while we're at it, what do they do? I mean, because if they feel like they just keep getting jerked around every time an administration changes hands, I feel like they just acquiesce and say, all right, just screw it, because inevitably we know some wacko is going to come back into office that's going to force us all electric or force us into solar panels. So we'll just have to take our lumps whether we want to or not. Do you think an administration can make a difference here?
I think an administration can hopefully reverse course before it's too long. But I do agree with you that ultimately they will throw in the towel, right? Uncertainty in the market is deadly. And right now, if you are running a business or planning on running a business, you do not know what tomorrow is going to bring. And not just in terms of energy prices, but in terms of immigration prices. Look at restaurants in my great city of New York, where I was born and raised. I was there all last week, although thank God I'm back on my farm in Shenandoah, because I hate New York now, sadly. But my beautiful city of New York, restaurants closing left and right. Why? Because they've turned the area into illegal immigrant housing. And you're not going to spend $85 on a porterhouse looking at a bunch of illegal immigrant tents out the window. It's just not. So famous restaurants are shutting down. Uncertainty breeds chaos. And uncertainty in energy markets breeds chaos. And so all these industries you mentioned, the automobile industry, the entire fossil fuel industry, manufacturing, if you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, how do you plan? How do you budget? You and your family looking at your 2024 budget. What's tuition going to be? What's this going to be? How do you plan? It's impossible to do so. And that's the problem that we're seeing with this administration, is that it creates perpetual states of chaos. And that's not how you run a great country like America. We've never had this sort of chaos dominate our marketplace, and we have it now.
It is always great to catch up with you, Daniel Turner, founder, executive director, Power the Future. Thanks for being such a clear voice on such an important issue. It's everything. I mean, without cheap, plentiful, readily available energy, we're screwed. It's like that's it. It's ball game, isn't it? It's not sexy to talk about power supply and power grids until we get freak cold and people start dying in the cold and we're rationing heat and burning furniture like they do in Germany. You don't want it to get to that, but that's unfortunately what it's going to take, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it is, and that's why the climate agenda is the ultimate example of white privilege, because only a certain group of people who are so comfortable in their socioeconomic status have the luxury of saying, I'm going to lay down in traffic to fight climate change, or I'm going to stand here on a street corner and scream no more oil. The rest of us have jobs to do. The rest of us have a life to live. The rest of us are trying to survive. But it is a luxury of the rich people because they don't care if they're making life expensive. They don't care if they've driven up prices 30, 40% across the board. It's indifferent to them. And so they don't care that there are 40,000 children in Congolese cobalt mines, right? They don't care about 40 dead whales on the eastern shore. It is the ultimate form of white privilege to say, I am so worried about the climate that this is now my life calling, because most of us don't have the luxury of being worried about climate change. We're just trying to survive in the Biden economy.
Yeah, that must be Obama's white half, because he's got those 2 tanks underneath his house, those thousands of gallons of propane. That must be the white privilege half of Barack Obama, I guess, huh?
Why didn't he put up wind turbines? He's right on the water, and he's got 30 acres of land.
He must not be worried about the rising oceans either, huh?
He doesn't want to ruin his view. So he doesn't care if the Stigall family has no more view of the coast, but on his private land, he's not ruining his view. And that's a luxury. That is the half white privilege luxury of Barack Obama. You don't get a view anymore at the beach, but he keeps his.
And the thousands of gallons worth of propane underground, just in case he needs it to no doubt power his gas stove in the kitchen, by the way. I'll bet you money, Daniel Turner.
Absolutely, 100%. It's the same privilege that allowed him to have his 60th birthday party when we were in COVID lockdowns. Why I always
Yes.
compare the climate agenda to the COVID agenda. If you are special, you are allowed to be exempted. John Kerry still has his private jet. He blames his wife for it. Such a gentleman, right? He threw her under the bus in front of that congressional hearing. Not my plane. Just like Sheldon Whitehouse was like, I'm not a member of a whites-only club. My wife is. So such chivalry in the Democrat Party. But that is why I compare it to COVID. They will always exempt themselves. The rules are for the little guy like you and me.
Thank you, Daniel Turner.